Hello, Brobs. We're back with Ernie. Hemingway's sister Sonny remembers by Madelaine Hemingway Miller. I'm on the wrong chapter, I can see, but I'll go to chapter 4 here shortly. If I can get to it. Up to Michigan, we just read that. Settling in. The first chore upon arrival at the cottage was to take the shutters off the windows and pile them in the woodshed. Then Dad would climb the homemade ladder up to the roof to take off the chimney covers that had big rocks on them to keep the wind, rain, snow, birds, insects, squirrels, and bats from coming down into the living room or the kitchen stove. Of course, the cover on the chimney for the wood stove in the kitchen had to be removed before a fire could be started for cooking. You only had to forget that one time. The lesson of the smoke and the grand cleanup stuck with you always. After we had raked the yard and picked up the fallen branches, we were allowed to go barefoot. Then we would wander a little and savor the new clean smells of Walloon Lake. When you first arrived from the city, the lapping of the waves seemed so loud, but soon we got accustomed to it and listened to farther away scuns and could see sights far off. Shortly after we arrived, we were each assigned duties at the cottage. Ernie chopped most of the wood we needed and got very handy with the axe. But after a neighbor boy split his foot chopping barefoot, Dad made Ernie wear shoes whenever he went off to chop the chunk wood into stove-sized pieces. Checking in at Bacon's farm nearby was an early joy. We made arrangements for morning and evening milk, and then we all took turns fetching it, along with fresh churned butter and new-laid eggs, rain or shine. Our icebox we kept filled from our own farm across the lake. Dad's joke answer when asked what he raised on the farm was, "The best thing we raise is the flag." But we did manage to grow potatoes, vegetables, hay, and strawberries, and fruit was plentiful in the orchard. And I were paid a small sum to pick potato bugs, which were dropped in kerosene-filled soup cans. We also pulled milkweed by the hundred. Warren Sumner, for one, cut ice in the winter and packed it with sawdust in the ice house there. We'd take ice tongs and a piece of oilcloth to carry it across the lake in our boat. We always had either rowboats or launches to get about the lake. The launches we kept at Ernie Culbertson's boathouse in the west arm of the lake in the winter. The rowboats and later our canoes stayed in our boathouse. When the canoe was new, it rested all winter in the living room, covered with a bed quilt. The original living room at Windermere. The window box seats were also used for beds. Mother's hand-braided rug was made from old clothes. And this is the side yard and annex at Windermere with Mama's description beneath the photo. Marceline, Ernest, Harold Gore, Ursula, Joe Gore, and Sonny in the yard at Windermere Cottage. The first few days at the lake, we had to be on the lookout for deadheads, logs with one end waterlogged that often showed only a tip above the surface. These were very hazardous to boating of any sort. Shore cottage owners were constantly on the lookout for good and not so good pieces of lumber or logs that washed up on the beach after an onshore wind. Many of the permanent docks from the west arm down to the foot of the lake gradually came apart from ice pressures of the spring buildup. Their timbers were often good enough to build rafts and even diving platforms. Finders keepers, we'd say, when a good piece floated ashore. And that will finish that chapter. Goodbye. Good boy.